Hi guys, welcome to lesson number 32 of our series Drawing Techniques for Beginners. This sees the start of our next project, which is this fantastic reference image I found over on Pixabay of some Converse trainers or basketball shoes, I guess they are. We've just finished our drawing of our Siberian Husky, which we aptly named Shadow. I really liked seeing some of your attempts, or more than attempts. You've done some fantastic work over on the group. If you've not heard of our group before, it's called Tutorial Tuesdays, Beginner to Pro. I've set that up alongside the YouTube channel where I'm really just trying to teach people how to draw from sort of beginner to pro. And we've done a few portraits, we've done a few different exercises on there. So like I say, we're up to lesson number 32. And without further ado, I think we'll crack on with this one. I'm going with the grid method again. I've taught a couple of different methods. I know some of you said that you've been struggling a little bit with the grid method. One thing to make sure that you do is you measure your grids the same size. If you've not measured them the same size, if you wanted to enlarge something, just make sure that you have got the same amount of squares on as you have got the reference image. So if I wanted to make this drawing double the size of this, I would still make sure that I've got 10 across and the same number going down that I have on the reference image. I would just make them twice as big, which would obviously mean I'd need twice as big a piece of paper. Then you understand that you've got things in the right place. I've made my lines a little bit darker than I normally would do, just so that you can see them. And you've probably noticed today that I've actually had to set the camera slightly higher because I wanted to try and get both the reference image and my work all in the same shot. You can see that I've taped down my pieces of paper. That's only so that you guys can see what I'm doing a little bit clearer. I would ordinarily be working with the reference image maybe off to the side and I'd be moving the paper around. But I'm going to get started with this. We're just going to start plotting this out and hopefully you'll get the gist of it. So I'm going to just look for the general width of this shoe in the foreground to start with. So I can see that I'm coming into square 7D. So 7D, which is somewhere here, and I'm just coming into the corner, sort of there. I'm just loosely getting this in to begin with, and I can see that we're taking up, or we're occupying this section here. It's been extremely hot today here in the UK. It's one of the hottest days we've had, so I am struggling a little bit with the heat. And then I can see, let me just double check, we're in E6. E6 is there, yep. And I can see that that's where the end of the shoelace comes in, so just marking that out, getting the rough shapes, basic shapes, and I can see that the little toggle, I'm not sure what they're called actually, the end of the shoelace, the bit with the plastic on, not entirely sure what they're called. I'm sure you could enlighten me and let me know what they are down in the comments or over on the group. So I can see that that doesn't quite come to the top of D6. And the more you have a go at this, the better you will become at it. I know it's quite tricky to start with, but it's like I've said before, this is not my favourite method of plotting a drawing out. I just feel like it leaves too many lines, and I know that we can make the lines lighter and use a lighter pencil, but you've always got to be rubbing out, you've always got to erase, no matter how light you make it, which for me takes away from the drawing rather than adding to it. I'm just looking where these shoelaces lie. In D6, double check that we're in D6. Yep, it's very easy to get lost in these initial stages, so make sure you're constantly just double checking where you're. I'm going to go for this lace now over onto the left because that's quite a good reference. So we're looking in D5 now because we can see that this lace takes up almost the entire square. It actually occupies more than this square, but we've got quite a nice reference line there, which we can then use to work from as we move around the drawing. Just gauging roughly how wide that comes. We've got a slightly rounded edge, and we've got the toggle, or whatever this is called, which just comes out into this section over there. Okay, so continuing this lace up, we're going into C5 now. So if this is the first time you've come across my channel, thank you so much for clicking on it and having a look at a video. Like I say, I have been doing a series of art video tutorials, and we're up to 32 now, but come and check our Facebook group out. It's called Tutorial Tuesdays Beginner to Pro, and ask to join that, and I will accept your request. We're quite a happy bunch on there. We're not too critical, and we've got a lot of beginners on there, so if you're just starting out, then I think you'll find the group quite supportive, with some great artists in there as well that are going to lend their support and advice and help, which is fantastic. Somebody posted on the group the other day, be prepared to be a beginner no matter what level you think you're at, and that's really great advice for everybody. So I'm just looking here now. I've slightly lost myself with where this lace comes. So B4. So I've gone too. I can see I've gone too high with this now, because this lace doesn't come all the way around. It finishes at this sort of angle. So and that's what just constantly checking your reference image does for you. So I can see that lace now comes into the corner of that square, which gives me another nice reference there, because I can then gauge the thickness of this and see how it comes down and falls. Yep, I'm quite happy with that one. So we've got the eyelet, the silver eyelet, which is just reflecting some light in there. So we do definitely need to capture this. This is going to be an opportunity there for us to create some realism with this drawing. So the top of our trainer now comes into A4, and we're using A4 paper, or at least I am. So I guess there's some coincidence there. Okay, so I can see where I made that correction now, and I'm happier with how that's lying. And you're going to find these little mistakes all the way over, and the more of the lines you get down on your page, the more opportunities you're going to have of gauging sizes and things like that, and positioning. So get some lines down initially. It doesn't need to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect straight away. And are we actually aiming for perfection? I'm not entirely sure we are. I think that's setting ourselves up to fail if we're aiming for perfection. What we're doing is we're training our eye to see things and look at how things interact with other objects around our drawing. We're just roughly sketching this out at the moment. So I'm just checking I'm in C1. I am in C1 on my reference as well. So I know that if I'm in the same square, I'm not a million miles off. I'm not going to end up with my drawing much too big or much too small, with the heel in the wrong place, or can see that does intersect this corner there, and it takes out some of this. And it comes back up to about halfway in D3, the edge of D3. Okay. And then I'm going to come up into D4. So edge of D3, possibly there. And then it just starts to almost level out slightly. So am I high enough there? Yes, I am. That's going to continue through. And I've got a lace in there that I haven't quite got in yet. So this part of the lace coming in there, I'm now ready for, because I know that that cuts just slightly higher than that. So I might have been correct. I might sound like I'm babbling on a little bit. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to share the thoughts that I'm going through, the processes that I'm going through in my mind as I'm sketching these things out, just so that you get a better understanding of what it is I'm trying to achieve with each stroke, and how I'm coming to that conclusion as to where something lies or what this means in the drawing. Now I know that this tucks in under there, so I might have gone slightly too high. There we go. So we've actually got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 laces in essence, which is 2 bows, I guess. 2 bows and what is that? I don't know. It's hard to tell exactly what that is and where it's lying. So never mind. We don't need to be experts in converse trainers to be able to draw a pretty good representation, which is what we're after. I just thought that this drawing would make a good project for us, because there's a lot of contrast in there, but there's a lot of details as well. I mean, we're really going to be able to go to town with some of this material look and the stitches, but I just like the general composition of it and the contrast. So it's something I don't recall drawing anything like this before, but what I want to get across to you is, I had somebody comment, or I think they made a post over on the Facebook group earlier in the week, and I think they wanted to know how to draw. I'm just checking what number I'm on here. E6. E6 is where I need to be with this part of the lace. So I can see I've come down too low. Well, maybe that was the black line, the black stripe, in which case I'm not a million miles off actually. That's probably what that was. Somebody commented, how do I draw a tree? And I saw that post and I commented back that really what you want to be asking yourself is, rather than how do I draw a tree, is how do I learn to see the values and the shapes and the edges and those things that are really important in a drawing, rather than looking at something and saying, okay, that's a tree, how do I draw that? What we're really doing is we're looking for shapes, values and opportunities to bring things forwards and push things back. And then once you start looking at reference images in that way, you start to realise that you can actually draw anything. It's not about being able to draw a nose or an ear. It's actually about seeing what's really there, which is different values, different shades of grey, or in some cases we're going to have some black on there. Once you do that, drawing becomes much easier. Okay, I'm quite happy with how this is taking shape. We're going to have to use our imagination a little bit here, because this is the background of this image is so white. There's nothing to contrast it against the edge of this boot here. We've got a general idea of how it's falling. I can see It's probably taking up a portion of the, maybe it's slightly. And see, now if this was a commission that I was doing for somebody, I would have to get myself a different reference image of maybe just a Converse trainer, just to see how much that does bulge out there. I could maybe fiddle around with the image on my iPad or something and try and bring the contrast up or take the contrast down in certain areas just to see if it gives me a better look at it. But it's not hugely important for this drawing because it's not, like I say, it's not something that I'm going to be selling or giving to anybody that's, you know, asked me to commission it. You know, if I'd been asked to draw this by the chief executive of Converse or somebody that knew a lot about Converse, then I'd have to get those things right, but I haven't. So that makes my life a little bit easier. Now, I'm not advocating getting things wrong and cutting corners. You want to try and get things as accurate as possible. But sometimes we can get bogged down in the details and it's really not that important. I was talking in the last series of the last project when we were drawing our husky, I guess in a little bit in the eye project before that as well. When we're drawing things like hair, don't get too bogged down in trying to draw every single strand of hair. What we're looking for is we're looking for shapes and general flow of things. So I'm looking for this general arc now. Roughly where is it sitting? You can see the other side protruding out slightly there. I've possibly made that slightly bigger than in the reference, but that's okay. We've just got to get the perspective of this right as well. So the back of this trainer is definitely looking as though it's bigger than the front. That's called foreshortening. I've done a couple of videos on perspective drawings. I've got so many different ideas in my head that I want to do that I'd be there forever making videos, and unfortunately I can't do that just at the minute because I have other commitments. But go and check that out. If that's something you're interested in doing, then there's some very simple methods that we can use to learn how to draw buildings and things like that. But just understanding how perspective works is probably quite a good skill to have for an artist. Okay, so we have an eyelet which is in A4, and it comes down a little bit into B4. I've got to get the shape of this right, because although I know this is a circular eyelet, the perspective that we're drawing it means that it's going to be sort of rounded or oval shaped, and we've got its corresponding, I guess it's the corresponding eyelet, which is sitting slightly more face onto us, so we haven't got quite the same oval shape. And we have one just peeping out of the shoelace. There are two eyelets here, and I can remember watching, it's one of those YouTube videos that it's something like top 20 things you think you knew the use for but really didn't. And one of them were these holes here. Everybody thinks that these are for ventilation, but there was something to do with lacing them up through these. I don't know if it gave more support or stability, but there was a way of lacing it and it came through these eyelets, which I thought was quite interesting. Okay, I'm going to get some rough idea of where this stitching lies, because again that's going to be quite an important aspect. It's going to supply us with some contrast, so I'm going to get the general flow. And that disappears down into this darker area, and I think it's really important, this area here. I was talking about this in one of the last videos, that because we understand how light works, even though these stitches are white on the black or the dark canvas, as the white goes into the darker area, into the shadowed area, that gets darker as well. So these stitches at the top here are going to be lighter than the stitches at the bottom here. Even though my brain knows that these are still white, the way that the light is hitting it means that this is darker. So that's going to be an opportunity for us to really show that we understand that concept, and gives us another great opportunity. So I can see we have a few stitches down this side. Not too important that I get those in there right now, because we're going to add those in. So we have the stitches across the back now, and there's an angle there that we can see, so we have the stitches now coming down. And these have a rough machined look to them. We can see that there's a specific pattern and sizing to them, but it's quite rough looking. Okay, so let's have a go at looking at this, the one in the background. So I can see that we're coming into C5, and it comes up to meet. So I'm just looking for that angle there. Am I correct? And again, we've got that same issue that we can't quite see where. I think that's going to be quite a nice opportunity for us to try and create that look, to give us that very, very bright looking background, which almost allows the trainer to run into it. So I think we're going to try and capture that within our drawing. Okay, so we're looking in this area now. And just capturing that black line, and then there's a crease, I guess, where the rubber's attached, that comes back around and fades out slightly. Now we're going to need to capture that shadow. We can see the shadows hitting it, so it's very clear to us where the light's coming from. It's coming from this left side as we're looking at it. But let's capture this shadow while we can. We've got a little bit of a overlap because the material that it's landing on is not flat, so we're going to capture that. Again, that's another opportunity to trick the viewer into believing that what they're looking at is something that's got realism, or it is a realistic looking object. So we're sort of almost there now. I'm quite happy with the progress we've made on this. We're just going to need to try and get this converse sign in. So let's make sure definitely we're on track. B2, so B2. So I was going too far over. I can tell you that now. I was looking in B3. That's what my eye was telling me. So it's a very common mistake that even somebody that's been drawing for a long time and had lots of practice, we still need to check and double check things sometimes. So this is another opportunity for us to capture the realism. I know that this is a round badge on the Converse trainer because I've seen them a million times, but because of the way that the trainer's sitting, we haven't got a perfectly round circular shape here. We've got a slight dog leg in this section here, which if you look at it corresponds a crossover with one of these creases. And looking for things like that are so important. We've got a flattened bottom, and when you initially draw this, you're going to think this looks wrong, it doesn't look right. This is the stage of the drawing that we just have to trust our eyes. So where's our star sitting? It's sitting in B3. So B3, we are somewhere there, and then we are somewhere there. B3 again. Now I've drawn these stars quite a few times. The last time I was drawing one was on the tornado jet that I've been looking at, and what I noticed was what you have is you have two, I guess they're called chevrons. So I need to make sure that these, and I'm doing these very lightly here, I'll go over them slightly darker in a second just so that you can really make them out. And then that to there means that that to there. So we're not a million miles out with that. But I've also got to remember that I'm not looking at it straight on. So there is going to be some foreshortening in there, which again is going to give us that realism. And this just takes practice. You know, some of you are going to say, oh, you know, how do you draw those stars? I've just practiced them a little bit. And again, don't think of it as a star. Use your reference image, use your guidelines. I'm not going to go to town with the converse writing because I don't need that in there right now. I'm just going to check that I'm happy with a lot of these lines. But I think I'm quite happy with how this is looking. I've got something sticking out at the back there. I don't know what that is. I might have a look on the reference image on my iPad and see if I can pull that out. But sort of half an hour, I'm looking at the time now, we're around about half an hour, and I'm pretty happy with how we've progressed with this. We've got all the major lines down. I hope you've sort of followed my train of thought. I've really tried to sort of vocalize what's going through my head just so that you get the process, and it's a great way to learn. We're going visual but also audio. With me talking you through the process. It does sometimes sound like the ramblings of a madman, but that's sort of the process I go through. I'm quite happy to leave it at that now. So, you know, I might just mess around with a few of these angles and make sure I've got things right, but that's the sort of position that I would like you guys to be at the end of this. And then when we start next week, we're gonna start in the dark areas, and we're gonna go straight in with the 2B. I'm not gonna mess around with the harder pencils in this area because this is going to be quite dark. So we're gonna go 2B, 4B, and maybe up to a 6B in that. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you've learned a few things. Like I say, if you're not a fan of the grid method, then go and use your own method. I don't mind if you trace it, whatever. That's not the thing that we're looking at. What we're really looking at is, can we develop shade, light sources? Can we create dimension? And can we see things for what they really are? So however you get that down onto your paper, one thing that I would also say that I'm going to do is, I've just noticed I'm going to get this shadow in on the bottom. That's important. So add the shadow. I will add the shadow onto mine. If you've got any questions, get hold of me over on the group as always. I'm really enjoying making these videos and having you draw along with me, guys. So keep posting your progress. Don't forget to find me over on Instagram. It's @artisticn1k. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you're thinking of the series so far. And don't forget, every share, like, comment that you do give me on these videos does make a huge difference to the channel and to the growth of the group and the community that we're developing. So thank you so much once again for all the support. I'll speak to you all over in the group, no doubt, during the next week. But I hope you get on well with this, and I can't wait to see what you're doing with it. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you next week. Hit subscribe, smack the notifications button, follow me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter.